How's everyone doing today? I'd like to welcome you to the Performance Pulse podcast, and I have a guest here with me today, Lauren Callahan. How you doing today, Lauren?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and I'm really happy to have you. I've been on this quest to find really unique guests within the realm of health and human performance that have an eclectic background that were able to build a business out of combining a really unique skill set and various life experiences into serving a specific demographic. And you absolutely fit the bill. And to give the audience a little bit of an overview of Lauren's background. She is a published author, first and foremost, which I just have to commend you. She's written two books, Powerful Not Tired and Couch to 50 Miles, which we are going to talk about quite a bit. She is a certified Reiki Master. She is also a yoga instructor and an ultra running coach. I probably missed a couple things, which we will be sure to go over.
It's
But
great.
with that being said, it is obvious that she has a really diverse background. So my first question for you, Lauren, is was this planned or was this just an organic process that led you to this point today?
This was absolutely not planned. And I will say that in my first book, Couch to 50 Miles, I do like chronicle this journey. I have a background of trauma. So my childhood, if you were going to diagnose, you would say that there was complex childhood trauma. The result of that was I was very much a person that came out with a belief that I can't do fill in the blank, right? I can't. Um, and so life, had a way of changing that. I put a lot of work into personal healing and began getting curious about a lot of different things. And I would say that the things that really sparked this journey for me was one, when I did my yoga instructor training course. That taught me, it almost sounds irrelevant, but it's not. It's very foundational. It taught me to love myself. And that foundation of learning that it was okay to love myself and it was okay to pursue things, just because, right? Just to know what we are capable of as human beings, right? I got permission for that. And then the next thing was I started running, and there's no super incredible story there, except that I met the man who is now my husband, and he was training for a half marathon. And I thought, well, he's cute. Let me run with him. I mean, it really was that way. That's the story. But what it did was, again, it sparked this journey for me of learning about nutrition and learning about training and caring for my body and my mind in a way that I never knew possible. And I would say the other thing to throw in there, as far as what were the things that sparked this journey, was that I did become a therapist. There are a lot of therapists that have a background of trauma that end up becoming a therapist, in order to heal themselves and also extend that healing to other people. That was totally me. So all of these things were floating around for me, this healing journey, therapy, having this permission to love myself and explore all that means just as a human being. And again, discovering the power of nutrition, and exercise, and not just exercise, but training, right? The power of that in our lives. And those were the things that I would say got me started.
And so, correct me if I'm wrong, you were a therapist by trade to begin with. So went from therapy to yoga to running. And then I recall from us talking off air, it then into gut health and the emphasis on nutrition. Or did I miss something in the midst of that? And just trying to connect the dots.
Almost. I did the yoga training first,
Okay.
and I started running before I actually officially became a therapist. So therapy was kind of in the mix there. And then later, as I, continued my exploration of nutrition and training and all of the really cool things that can enable you as a human being to do and achieve and accomplish and just experience. Part of that journey was getting really curious about gut health. And I was hearing all kinds of stories about the gut and how the gut is your second brain and how the gut is related to everything. But in particular, at this point, I was working as a therapist, but I was also trying to run a marathon, and I just couldn't. And, for someone around this time, I was 40-ish. I mean, this was kind of a 4-year period of attempting to run a marathon and failing every time, and no identifiable reason why. I mean, I was a decently healthy person. Why? And I'm doing the training. Like, why can't I do a marathon?
When you say
Um,
failing, what point were you failing at? Was there like a certain number of miles that you were like getting to and then your body was breaking down? Or can you elaborate a little bit on what you define as failing?
yeah, and I do use that word failure in kind of air quotes, right? Because a failure is you don't achieve that objective for that day. It means nothing for the next day, and it's always a learning experience if you let it be. And it was a learning experience, but over that 4-year period, it was always something a little bit different. But it usually had to do with inflammation, recovery, and repetitive injuries, especially around my knee. So that as far as the mileage, when that would kick in, that was always different. Sometimes it could be 4 miles, and sometimes I'd get really close, maybe 16 or 18 miles, but it was always around inflammation, recovery, and repetitive injury. So when I heard about gut health, and in particular how athletes who were improving their gut had, didn't have the repetitive injury anymore, my first thought was, that's good marketing. I didn't believe it. Like, what does your gut have to do with your knee, right? Like, it didn't make sense for me. But I was curious enough, so I did go on this path of healing my gut. I did what I do for all of my clients. I tested my gut first to know what I was working with, and then did all of the things that were specific to me to healing my gut. I did that, and then after I did that, yes, athletically, things completely changed for me. Like, not only did I go out and run my first marathon 6 months later, but then I turned around and I ran a 50 miler. And then I did my first Ironman, and then I did another 50 miler, and then I did another Ironman, and then I did 100K. And that was all within 1 year. So truly, like, from a performance perspective, healing my gut was absolutely phenomenal.
That's fascinating how that transition or that decision to focus on that led to a breakthrough in which you were able to crack the code, which I would imagine that's what led to you writing the book and recognizing, okay, I figured out some methods here that can improve performance. Now I got to share with the world. I love that story of the personal testimony. Before we dive into the book, though, you now have a practice where you offer a myriad of different services. So I just wanted you to discuss, at what point did you recognize that you can build a business with all the skills that you have to offer?
So I do want to throw in that one of my I can'ts that I used to have would absolutely have been, I can't build a business. Okay. But a, a part of this journey has been absolutely learning to the core of my being that I can do anything. And that's absolutely what I want people to know. Spoiler alert, it's one of the chapters in Couch to 50 Miles. And coming to that, like, knowing the core of your being, right? I can do anything. So I just wanted to throw that in. But as far as making that transition, so in that process of healing my gut, yes, athletically, I mean, this is working wonders, right? Like, I'm not having the inflammation and recovery and repetitive injury issues that I did. But the other thing that happened in that process, and remember, the context here was I was a therapist, okay? The other thing that happened in that process is when I looked at my gut health, right? Like, on paper, right? Because I tested it, right? One of the things that I saw that surprised me the most, among other things, but surprised me the most, was that my serotonin was really, really low. Now, serotonin, most of us are familiar because serotonin is related to our mood, right? Like, if you are depressed and go to the doctor and say, give me, an antidepressant, it's going to have something to do with serotonin, okay? But little known fact is that actually 90% of your body's serotonin is produced in your gut. And so here I was, a therapist, and knowing that, yes, I'm dealing every day with healing my own things with depression and anxiety and panic, right? And that's related to this background of trauma. And every day I'm helping other people to heal as well. But then I'm looking physiologically at my body and seeing, wow, I have a really uphill battle. My serotonin is really low. And side note, I mean, if I were to go off on a tangent, an antidepressant actually doesn't help with it. It makes it worse. Okay, so that's maybe a whole other discussion I could go into. But I think it's important for people to know that it is not that kind of fix. It actually complicates things. Okay. So I'm seeing that my serotonin is really low. And so I go on this process over 6 months. I mean, this is an ongoing process, but really for 6 months, I did a lot of like heavy work to heal my gut. And I could see it on paper. I could see my serotonin level going up. But not only that, I could feel it. Like I felt the difference. I mean, I would have these moments where I'd say, oh my God, I'm happier. And I'd have another moment where I'd say, oh my God, I can sleep. And actually, serotonin is directly related to your sleep and your body's production of melatonin. I didn't have problems with bloating. Like, oh my God, I'm a woman in midlife. This is a thing. This is a thing for women in midlife to have bloating. Like, it is a problem, right? Especially with a lot of athletes that I work with too. Well, now I didn't have that. Well, come to find out, serotonin is actually directly related to your digestion. I mean, there's all kinds of things just going on in your gut, right? And so when I improved my gut, not only did I go out and run a 50 mile and do an Ironman and all that, but also I'm happier and I'm sleeping at night and I don't have the, energy issues and the inflammation issues. And, I don't have the bloating issues and all that. And so really, for me, when people started coming into my office and saying, oh my God, like I'm depressed or, I can't fall asleep because my mind is racing. Yes, I was happy. Like I loved helping people deal with, their trauma and mood and mindsets and all the thing. But I really want to say, can we look at your gut? Is this actually like a lot simpler than we think, right? Like it could just be a matter of you healing your gut and you might be fine, right? Like I was there. And so it really felt like a space where I couldn't fully help people to the extent that I wanted to, right? And so that began my transition into this holistic health space so that I wanted people to know you don't have to suffer, right? You don't have to like, and this is not hard, right? Like your health and your mood and all the things, it doesn't have to be hard.
This is fascinating. So, through providing a series of services that are more behavioral driven in the state of someone's uh, mental and just like their moods, you drew a parallel between their physiology and the impact of their gut and recognized if you can solve that, you can actually solve various other problems in their life.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, have you came across anyone that offers a service similar where they blur the lines between mental health and physiology like that? That's just really unique.
See, there are a lot of different versions of that. I mean, God, for example, yoga, right? Like I'm a yoga instructor. I mean, that definitely is one of those things where you're addressing, your physiological health and your mental and emotional health at the same time, depending on how you do it. People have different takes on it. I would say it's out there, but you know, I haven't experienced it to the level that I hate the way this sounds, but in the way that I'm offering it,
Yeah,
right?
no,
Like, and I,
for
and I
sure.
get that from people all the time. They're like, I've been to the doctor and they tell me everything is normal. I can't tell you how many times I hear that, right? And so, no, I don't see this combination in this way. And so I feel like the people that do end up working with me, it ends up being this, oh my God, like finally, we finally like we can get to the root of this and it's simple.
And I don't mean to deviate or just focus on this, but as you can see, I'm really drawn into what you're saying. I'm learning as you're speaking. And what I'm curious about is it an acidity thing that's leading to inflammation through the consumption of specific food groups? Because I am familiar with the impact acidic foods have on inflammation and recovery. Without going too deep, you don't have to if you want to be my guest, but what exactly is a prevalent issue in some quick fixes, just to the audience at home in regards to if gut health may be an issue that they can make a couple of small decisions and it can have a major impact immediately?
That's a great question. It really is. And what I want to say is it's so important that actually one of the first things that I do in what I call my gut reset program, Goddess Gut Reset program, Goddess Health is the name of my business, is I work very intentionally to introduce practices and very simple ones. Like this is not an overload of all the things that you have to do. Very simple practices to reduce the acidity in your body. And we actually even start out doing it with like without even a focus on nutrition, right? Like nutrition plays a huge part. But there are things that you can do to reduce that acidity in your body that don't even have anything to do with nutrition. So yes, like you asking that, yeah, it's so important. It is a major player. And yes, your gut is directly related to inflammation and acidity in your body. So another thing that I want to throw in there, actually on my website, goddesshealth.org, one thing that I offer is a free resource on 5 things that you can do to improve your gut that have nothing to do with nutrition. And these are all things related to reducing that acidity. And one of the reasons that I bring that up is because, as an example, one of those things is reducing stress. Now I say that, and I know a lot of people are like, yes, I already know that. Like, we all know that stress is going to be the number one thing that kills us all, right? If you let it go. But I can't emphasize enough like how stress and how external stress and your body's ability to respond to stress is actually huge when we're talking about inflammation and acidity in your body. um, and yeah, and just reducing the inflammation and improving your gut health so that you can get that inflammation down. And maybe to bring it back around, your question, related to foods and acidity, yes. And what I want people to know is that there are a lot of foods that can cause your body issues, but for a lot of them, it's not necessarily the food. It's actually just that your gut is in a pretty wretched state. And if you do the work to heal your gut, you quite possibly will find that the foods that bothered you before will not bother you now because your gut has had a chance to heal and fortify. And the things that used to be problems are just not, your gut is strong, maybe, and fortified against them. So it's not a problem in the way that it used to be. So maybe if nothing else, like that kind of highlights how individual a person's gut really is. Like your gut is different from mine, right? So really, healing your gut, yes, there are definitely some quick fixes, but our guts are so individual that that doesn't work for everybody, which is why I really emphasize that gut health reset, like getting your gut tested. So for example, okay, quick fix and a good illustration of it. So when I first tested my gut, one thing that I saw right off the bat, one of my gut metabolites that was high was what's called 3-methylxanthine. Okay, I actually test 11 gut metabolites, but one of them that was high was 3-methylxanthine. This is a gut metabolite that is directly related to inflammation in your body that, of course, affects your energy, recovery, performance, all the things. But this is specifically inflammation related to caffeine. And so when I got my results back, my 3-methylxanthine was like through the roof. And I thought, oh my God, I drink tea. Like I don't even drink coffee. Like I was kind of mad about this actually. Well, my husband, when we tested his gut, I can't tell you at that point in his life, it's different now, but I can't tell you the amount of caffeine that man drank. I mean, it was really bad. And so I was like, when we get his results back, I mean, this is going to be awful. And you know what? We got it back, and damn it, like his results were kind of high, but not really. They weren't as high as mine. And I was like, what the hell? I drink tea, right? And so, there's a couple things around that. One is that I am a chick and he's a dude, and that very much makes a difference when we're talking about.
Metabolizes it faster, huh?
Yeah, I think so. And all I can say is in my experience, like women have a much more uphill battle when it comes to your gut health. And I think a lot of that has to do with like hormones and everything else. And that's cyclical, like your gut health plays a huge role in balancing your hormones. Oh my God, so important for female athletes. Anyone who's worried about performance. But it also had to do with just the health of our gut, right? Like mine was in more of an unhealthy state than his. So he was able to metabolize caffeine in a way that I was not, right? Later I healed my gut and I could handle caffeine a little bit more. Mostly taking it out. It's just not good for you. That's one of those basic principles, right? A quick fix, yes, like reduce your caffeine. However, it may not be quite the thing for you that it is for me, that sort of thing. It is highly individual.
And it's funny when you say caffeine because I'm realizing that caffeine can come from different sources. Obviously,
Mhm.
coffee will dehydrate you and it's far more acidic as opposed to the little gel packs with the electrolytes that you have when you're running, where that's probably a much better source of caffeine. But yeah, obviously all within moderation. But as you know, as a runner, it's like caffeine's like a superpower for sure. And I mean, I have 4 or 5 cups a day. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I I am an addict, and I'm big on trying to detach from anything that may have a hold on my decision making, and I just want to let go of things. I want to be as liberated as possible. And so I've thought about, okay, do I really need coffee? I can stop drinking it for like a week if I have to, but I really just don't want to. um, but that's neither here nor there. But I do want to transition into talking about your book. And so, Couch to 50 Miles and Powerful, Not Tired. As you're talking about all these things, I'm trying to figure out, well, which one came first? Because they definitely correspond with one another. So, yeah, first I'd like to know which one comes first, the general premise, and just talk about your process in writing those books and what the viewers at home could gather if they were interested in reading about it.
Sure. So Couch to 50 Miles came first. So I do have a special love for that book because it was my first.
How long is it,
um,
by the way? How many pages is it?
what's that? Sorry.
Pages is it?
How many pages?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. It's less than 150. I can tell you
Okay.
it's a quick read. Yeah.
And how long did it take you to write it?
That one took me probably a month to actually write it. And then are the things that come after that with editing and proofreading. And actually, I'll be honest, the editing process took longer than reading it. And here's the reason why.
Okay.
It was because I was much more this one was a more emotional story. And again, it was my first. And for anyone who's listening who is an author, like, I mean, you know that like writing a book is an emotional experience. You're putting yourself out there in the world.
I'm currently
Um,
writing a book. That's why I asked.
oh, what's that?
Currently writing a book. That's why.
Oh, that's so exciting. Yeah, yeah. Feel free to ask questions or anything. um, yeah, so I'm very, very open and honest in that book about my background because Couch to 50 Miles is obviously about running a little bit. But my running experience was a lot about learning what I can do. It was a lot about learning to love myself, and it was a lot about healing from those past experiences of trauma. And so I think my original intent in this book was to really talk about nutrition and training and recovery and all of those things. And it ended up becoming like it took on a life of its own, and it became much more story oriented. And I'm very open in that book about the personal side, the emotional side, the mental side, the healing journey that went into it. But I would say, one of the reasons that that book came up, I'd always wanted to write a book, so there was that. But when I would just tell people a little bit about my story, I would hear often, Lauren, you should write a book. And that especially comes from, when I started this journey, this was about 2016, I think is when I actually started, I wasn't even running a mile a day, right? I was walking slash jogging a mile a day. And right before that, I'd come back from Bangladesh. I lost my two children. I do have them now. But I lost my two children. I went through a very traumatic divorce. I had $500 to my name and half of a suitcase, right? That's where I started from. And so people told me, Lauren, you should write a book. So I did. But the other thing too, the thing that I hear so much is, when I would tell, when people would find out that I had just run 50 miles or done an Ironman, I heard so many times, I could never do that. I can barely run a mile. And I wanted people to know that was me just like 8 years ago. That was me. I could barely run a mile, right? I wanted people to know you and I are not that different. Like I'm not immortal, I'm a human being as well. And I wanted to plant that seed for people of what are you capable of? So that's where that first book came from. And then my second book, Powerful Not Tired, ended up, I think once I had told the story of Couch to 50 Miles, I felt a little more freedom to go into okay, so really, how do I do this nutrition thing, right? How do I heal my gut? I talked a little bit about it in the first book, but how do I heal my gut? And then at this point, I had introduced Reiki into my practice as well. I had developed what I call the Goddess First formula. And so I wanted to go into all of the how-tos around that. Like, how do you take your health, your happiness, your energy, your performance to levels that you never thought possible? That's why I wrote this second book.
And how quickly did the second book come after the first book?
I wrote it about a year later.
Okay. You know what's funny, and I've noticed this amongst people that have diversified backgrounds in the realm of health and performance, and that is that it obviously starts off in more of like the physical fitness aspect of it, whether it's strength training or running or sport specific, and then it begins to advance into more of the nuances and the details where you got to really dive into intricate things in order to get the edge. And I'm seeing that same pattern here with you, where it's like you're gonna first run and you gotta run consistently. And now, because the hardest thing to do is start. I think there's no doubt about that.
Yes.
I want to run a marathon. I got to start running, and I'm not very good at running, and this is hard. And then you begin running and you start getting hurdles. Well, what do I have to do to improve? And
Mhm.
then you start figuring out, oh, it's way deeper than physically being capable. And you go on this quest of knowledge, and that's where you then accumulate so much that you're able to be a source for others. I think it's an organic process, and I just love seeing this being a commonality amongst different people. Obviously, everyone has different journeys, but seeing this again here, that's just awesome. It's very inspiring. So obviously, to where you're at now with just your book and your business and being a parent, um, what advice would you have for your younger self before you even started as a therapist, to where you're at now, knowing what you know now? What would you say to yourself?
Yeah, two things really come to mind for me. And one is that I want my younger self to know that you really can do anything. Don't feel limited. Like if you ever have that thought, I can't, like don't even go there, right? Because like you are capable, you're smart enough, you are a human being capable of so much, right? And you can learn it, right? And you can try it and you can fail a million times and you can do it again, right? You can do it. So I would definitely tell my younger self that. And the other thing that comes up for me now, and I think, I mean, it almost sounds like a joke, and I really do mean it though, is I would tell my younger self to eat. Tell my younger self to eat more. I never had like an eating disorder or anything like that, but I would say that I had a disordered relationship with food. And that is related to a lot of things. That was definitely related to that trauma background. So a lot of people who do have like some version of maybe an eating disorder, um, not eating is a way to control something in your life. And so I think for me that was part of it, because there were so many things that were out of my control. But then the other thing was, I'm 43, so like people who are in my generation, especially women, we grew up with these awful messages about, you know, fat being bad for you, right? Like, don't eat fat, it's bad. Make sure you have the low fat option or, food, right? Like, excuse me, that like food is bad, right? And you should limit it. And it has done nothing but hurt us as women, right? Like, I have so many women that, they are struggling with, their energy and their weight. God, that afternoon slump, right? They're struggling with that and just with hormones and just having balanced hormones, right? And a lot of these women, I just get them eating again. And I'm not saying like, just go eat, Doritos and, cookies or whatever. But I mean, obviously like we're getting them eating more and it's, quality fats like coconut, salmon, avocado, or nuts, quality proteins, quality carbs, yes, carbs, right? Like all of the things, actually eating them. And you know what? They lose weight. They come back, they're like, I'm eating more and I'm actually losing weight now. And I'm not, an asshole in the afternoon. Like I'm not tired all the time. And it's because they're eating more, right? And for me, I would say definitely in my 30s, I got to this place where I felt terrible all the time. I was thin. Other people would look at me and say, oh, that's great, right? Like you're thin, but I felt terrible, and it was nothing that a doctor could put their finger on. And looking back now, I'm like, dear God, why didn't one of those doctors just tell me to eat more? Like that was the problem. Once I started eating more, that all went away. So that is something I would tell my younger self.
Well, it's almost taboo, especially for a doctor saying that to a woman, just like you have to eat. And it's interesting how you mentioned it's like you're working 100 miles per hour and you have control over what you eat, and when you feel like you're losing control in various aspects of your life, it's almost a discipline component. It's like I want to look thin, so I'm not going to eat as much. Where really that lack of energy, that brain fog, inability to maximize your workouts is due to the lack of eating enough.
Yes.
And I believe that that's really a prevalent issue amongst society.
Yeah, in general, I mean, I'd definitely highlight among like female endurance athletes, but it's not, and I work with some female endurance athletes, right? It's not limited to them, but that is definitely a thing in that population.
Well, I was gonna say, the people who are closest to me, they say that to me a lot. Is like you don't eat enough, and it's really just I was running 30 miles a week, and I'm up at about 5 a.m. every day, and I don't really eat breakfast. I intermittent fast, and I drink a lot of coffee, so it suppresses the appetite. And then
Yeah.
I'm working in an office for about 6 or 7 hours, and then I'm out in the field, and then I'm working out, and so I just don't have the time to eat sometimes. And it's just like I'm only eating 2 real meals a day. And the average person can get away with that, but my calorie consumption, I mean, excuse me, my activity level relative to my calorie consumption is just not enough.
Yeah.
And that will take a toll on you after an extended period of time. So very rarely do you hear an athlete say, well, I'm just not eating enough. Um, so yeah, for sure. And it's definitely a problem and it will impact your ability to perform at a high level. So
Yeah, absolutely.
all right, Lauren, you have provided us with a wealth of knowledge. What I'm really curious to hear is what is a public health issue or a stigma in the health and fitness industry that concerns you or you feel like people don't have a proper understanding about?
I think an issue that that I'm really passionate about, it relates to what we talked about earlier with the gut being related to our mood, and that interplay with serotonin. Um, the reason I'm so passionate about this, and I likely because of my background is, in being a therapist, certainly I worked with a lot of people who were taking antidepressants, right? And because I'm a woman in midlife, and I know, there's so many women who come to this stage and they're thinking, oh my God, I have always been able to deal with my stuff. And now I can't. And I'm crying all the time and I don't know why. And I'm angry. And, I just need to get on some kind of medication. Right. And yes, like I see this a lot with athletes. They're like, I'm not motivated anymore. And, again, I mean, you can't separate like your performance from your mood. Right. The reason I'm so passionate about this is because, to take an antidepressant, and certainly this is a peer-to-peer conversation. This is, I'm not recommending anyone go or not go on antidepressant medication, or I'm not recommending that anybody stop it, right? Like that is a decision that's individual, needs to be made with your doctor, all the things. That being said, we need to be educated, right? As far as antidepressants go, first of all, they're, statistically, they're only going to work for about 66% of people that take them. Okay. Which, it's like a full 33% of people getting their hopes up, right? And nothing happens. But even for the people that it does work for, it comes with this host of side effects. And some people, are fine with that, and some people are not. But the reason I'm so passionate about this is because I told you how, when I tested my gut, I saw that my serotonin was really low. I've never taken any kind of antidepressant medication to, whatever. But there it was really low. And I mentioned how 90% of your body's serotonin is produced in your gut. Well, here's the thing. If you take an antidepressant, it's, more times than not, it's going to be an SSRI. One of those S is standing for serotonin. It doesn't mean that it gives you serotonin. It just means that it affects how your body like produces and processes it. But the thing that's really important here is that it actually moves the production of your serotonin from your gut to your brain. So as it's doing that, yes, it may be helping with your mood for 66% of the people, right? But what it's also doing is it just took serotonin out of your gut. Why is that a problem? Well, I mentioned earlier, serotonin, it's related to your sleep as well. Serotonin breaks down further into melatonin. So your body, like the melatonin gummies, right? You're gonna go get if you can't fall asleep. Your body actually knows how to produce that on its own. And if you have a healthy gut and you're eating the foods that support serotonin production, okay, then you're going to feel happy. And then it's going to further break down into melatonin and you're going to be able to sleep. And then not only that, serotonin is hugely responsible for initiating your digestion. So, I mean, this is like a no-brainer. I mean, we know we eat food for energy, especially like we care about our performance, right? Like we know that energy is fuel for our performance. If serotonin is not there initiating digestion, you can imagine you're going to have problems with taking in that food, processing it, turning it into energy. You're going to get, you're going to get issues with the whole digestive process. Another problem with that is that, 70% of your body's immunity is actually housed in your digestive system. So once again, maybe you didn't come here thinking about immunity, but I mean, if you are like an athlete or, you care about your performance in some way and you're missing out on, your ability to perform at your highest because you feel run down or you're sick or whatever, it all goes back to your gut. So you can see how just simply taking an antidepressant takes that serotonin out of your gut and you just cause a problem with everything. Like energy, sleep, inflammation, digestion, immunity, like all of the things, right? And so it breaks my heart when it really, like, I'm so passionate about this. Like, it breaks my heart when I hear women, they're just like, oh my God, like, I think I just need to get an antidepressant. Maybe. And I'm not saying that you don't, but what I am saying is that it is so important to check your gut health first, to do what you can to improve your gut health. And you may be able to get to a point where you don't ever feel like you need an antidepressant at all, where actually, like, you feel great, right? Simply by improving your gut health.
Now, why do you feel like this information is not widely accessible?
In all the people that I've talked with, I like can think of one other person that knew what I was talking about when it came to serotonin, being, so closely related to your gut health. Every time I talk to somebody about it's usually a surprise. People don't know about it, right? Like they just don't know about it. And so, it's, I mean, I've talked to physicians that are not familiar with this, right? I mean, they can't know everything. Like they're great, but they can't know everything. We can't expect them to like have all the answers. But people just don't know it, right? And so they go in thinking, okay, well, let me just try this, right, and see if it works. And it ends up causing them like a host of problems, as would, I mean, really, like if you're on any sort of medication for like a long time, I mean, there are side effects, there are issues that we have not perfected things so much that we don't experience unintended consequences often when we take a medication.
I don't want to get too speculative, but it's almost like Eastern philosophy in regards to the acidity and the alkaline levels in found in food. And this is widely regarded in other parts of the world of just understanding the impact potential inflammation can have from various food groups and the time span within eating, or from a cultural standpoint, going on fasts and giving your gut a rest. Um,
Mhm.
almost, and it's embedded in culture. And it's interesting how these practices are just not emphasized in the Western world at all. So much so to the point where physicians don't appear to even have a grip on this information. It's not spoken about in the athletic world, with your family practitioner. It's just really interesting to me. It's a blind spot, and it's not overly complex, but yet so valuable and can have a drastic impact on just our overall quality of life. So really unique there. And I've read
Yeah.
about this as well. Tom Brady, he was had a crazy diet that got a lot of attention. Well, his trainer is a man by the name of Alex Guerrero that wrote a book called Balance for Life, and it's all about just the acidity and alkaline level of food groups and the impact that different food groups have. And even if you eat chicken and vegetables and a starch, the time period that you should eat each food, and that you should eat them one at a time, as opposed to eating different food groups simultaneously, and
Okay.
a lot of water all throughout the day, but not drinking water while you eat, but drinking water 20 minutes before you eat. Like these really, really small things that have an impact on gut health. That was my only initial exposure to just some of these philosophies. But I just say that to say that he was viewed to be a crazy person, and it was not accepted in the NFL for a while, just in regards to how Tom Brady ate and his approach to training, which just goes to show you it's like, yeah, people do not like to accept these new approaches to doing things, which is just unfortunate.
Yeah, for sure. God, I mean, I think about one of my clients who is a physician, and just such an amazing woman. And my heart goes out to her because like she is totally, she is one of those physicians who's completely on track with, all of this stuff, right? But she has 15 minutes, right? And she can tell people all day long, right? Do these healthy things. And unfortunately, that's just we regard that kind of advice like we would, scrolling through Instagram, right? Like the thing that's good for you, the thing's good for you, the thing's good for you, right? Which is, where, for some folks, the coaching can really come in, right? When you really have somebody who helps you make it a reality in your life,
Yeah.
as opposed to these are the things you should do and just move on.
For sure. And there's not a one size fits all for everyone. And I think we're
That's
looking,
right.
unfortunately. But really segueing to you now, you obviously have all the tricks and the knowledge and the understanding of what you need to do to perform at a high level. And you have competed quite a bit and you understand how to eat. So I'm curious, having done all that in the past, how are you training now? And I'm curious as to whether you're doing a lot of tracking. Do you wear wearables? Do you track your sleep? Do you try to eat the same food groups? Just what's your approach to training these days?
Yeah, that is such a great question. Okay, I want to answer the wearables question first.
How do you feel about wearables as well? I'm curious as to how you feel about them too.
Yeah, yeah. I have a love-hate relationship with them. I don't know that love-hate is actually correct. Let me backtrack on that. I very much believe, and this was a huge part of how I worked as a therapist and how I work as a coach now, that we all have different parts. There are different parts of us. There's, for example, there's the part of you that wants to go out and train today, and then there's the other part of you that wants to sleep in, right? I'm an advocate for sleeping in as much as possible. I think you need your sleep, for the record. um, but all that to say, I have a part of me that loves putting on my Garmin watch and seeing the numbers, like, and watching them improve and watching all the things. Like, I love it and I eat it up. And then there's a part of me that wants to throw it across the forest because I like to run on trails, like I'm a trail runner. So I want to throw it across the forest and say, forget it. I am just running today to enjoy looking at the trees and to take in the fresh air and the birds and the sky and everything else, right? And so Those are two very real parts of me, right? They're both very valid, and I think it just kind of depends on the day, and it depends on if I have a race coming up, and it depends on maybe the workload that I'm experiencing, or if I'm with my family or not, right? So the training is going to look different on different days. I very much believe statistically, like keep some things data driven as far as your performance. But then also you're a human being, and sometimes you have to put those things aside and take in, the energy of life around you and let that fill you. And that actually can do wonders for improving your performance over and above like watching the numbers on your watch.
Do you wear that watch exclusively for running? Do you wear it to sleep as well, or what's your focus with it?
I exclusively wear it when I train. So running, lifting, swimming, biking. Um, I'll wear it if I go out on a hike, right? I want to know how many miles I went, even if it's not a specific like training activity. If I go stand up paddleboarding, I want to know how far I paddled, right? Because then it counts. If you know how far you went, then it counts, right? But no, I don't really wear it for sleeping. Which is actually pretty funny because since I don't wear it throughout the day, every once in a while, if I just happen to leave the watch on, it'll give me a message like, "Oh, you hit your step goal of 4,000 steps," and I'm like, "Excuse me." Why is my, because they move your goal like based on what you actually do, and so if I'm not wearing my watch for activities, if I'm not wearing it all day, it thinks that I'm not moving at all, right? So it celebrates me for making 4,000 steps.
Yeah. Um, and you're doing all those things, paddleboarding, biking, swimming, running, lifting, you do all those things still today?
Yes, yes, I do. So if I'm gearing up for a particular race, those activities become more focused. When I need a mental reset, though, even if I am training for a race, I'll go do something different. Like I'm in the middle of training for an Ironman right now, and there are days that I need a mental reset, so I will ditch swimming or whatever and go paddleboarding, right? Because that is like mentally what I want to do. I will say that one of the major ways that my training has changed is that I do more lifting than you would generally see like on a normal endurance sports training plan. Um, that does not always help my performance in a race, but it does help me long term and it's good for my health. So, part of my story is that I didn't lift a barbell at all until probably like the age of 40. Okay. And you can look at me and tell, like, I'm not, I mean, I'm like all close to 6 feet, like, I'm long and lanky. I will never be like this, built kind of woman and don't aspire to be. But I do it because I fell in love with it. This was another one of those things of like, wow, I can lift a barbell, like I can do this, right? And so that feels good for me mentally, but also, I mean, we wouldn't even take the time right now to go into all the health benefits of lifting, right? Like especially not especially for women, it's just a different importance, maybe like a lot of similarities with men, but there's some different like specific benefits that women should be lifting and should not be scared of a barbell. Um, and I help, like, especially for some women, I help to make that like really, really not scary at all. And so it's really important. I mean, it's really important for your long-term health. And so for me, I will train for a race, but that is always like my secondary goal. My primary goal is that I'm healthy for life. And so I'll spend a little more time lifting than you would traditionally see in, for example, like an ultra running training plan, right? But that also means that I cut down the time that I spend in the endurance sports, right? So I run a little less, I swim a little less, bike a little less, so that I'm not, overtraining. But that's really important to me to keep that time lifting. I try to do it 3 days a week.
Well, and it comes to sacrifice too, especially with different modalities of activity. And if you want to be able to do the things that you enjoy doing for an extended period of time, you're going to have to build that foundation. And that obviously comes in the weight room with functional weight training and developing just the basic strength. And so it's like, I want to run and do those things, but I have to dedicate that time in the weight room.
Mhm.
Um,
That's right.
Totally normal. And it's really important. I think the average person has to understand that you can't marry your health goals to a certain weight or a certain time. it's all relative to what the demands are in your life and what the current state of your body is and what you're trying to do long term. So it's not like one specific metric is going to equate to optimal health and performance. You obviously know that, but yeah, I think that's really important that people just universally understand that. Is that it's not necessarily something you can quantify, it's a state of being.
Yeah, which is another reason that, one of the important things that I do as part of my training, but it's not like it is on a training plan or anything for me, but I do it every single day. And you were asking a minute ago about habits, but this is my every day when I wake up, and this is huge, this is a huge part of me training, and it's a huge part of me being healthy for life, and it's a huge part of me just being a human being, right? But every single morning I'm going to wake up, I have a cup of tea. Okay, not like I used to have a lot more, but I have a cup of tea, and I stretch slash do yoga for about 10 or 15 minutes as I'm drinking that tea. When I'm done with that, I do like a breath retention exercise. So it's deep breathing combined with breath retention. There's a lot that is so important for reducing that acidity in your body, making your body more alkaline, right? Bring it back to what we were talking about. It takes less than 5 minutes, right? And then I do a very short meditation. I do a short Reiki practice on myself. None of that takes very long. I mean, all of that together, it takes maybe, a half hour. If I decide to do a longer Reiki practice, I will, but it'll be less than a half hour. I'll eat a healthy breakfast and then I go about my day. And to me, like that is how my day every single day needs to start. It's so foundational for, I mean, yes, mindset for your emotions, but also just your body. Like you can't just be a robot if you want peak performance. Like you have to love and care for and nurture your body and your mind and your spirit in that way,
It's an ongoing
or in a
process.
similar way.
Oh, for sure. It's an ongoing process and consistency is key. Um, so transitioning now as we head out, I'm curious in a space like health and performance, and being a business owner, there could be a lot of different ways you define success. I'm curious as to what the pinnacle is in your industry for you, or have you defined that, or what it is that you're chasing? Are there milestones? What does the top look like for you?
Yeah, I think that's always evolving for me. But the context here is that, I do have a family. I have a lot of kids. Um, my husband
Okay,
has
how many?
tradition.
I'm curious. How many kids you have?
Yeah, so we're a blended family. I didn't like birth all of these children, but
Yeah.
like together we have 8 kids.
Oh, wow. I want to have at least five. That's why I asked. That's rare
Yeah.
these days, but yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, they're older now. It's a lot different. Several years ago, it's just on any given day, I'm completely crazy and having a lot of fun. And oh my God, like I don't even know where I am, it just depends on the day. So there's that. My husband is so hugely supportive of me like building a career. And the other thing I want to throw in too, well, certainly like I'm an athlete, so training is really important to me. And also as a side note, we do homesteading. Like we raise goats, bees, chickens. So that's an important part of my life too. Like I absolutely love it. I've always wanted to have, some kind of like farm or whatever. And so we have a little bit of one. So all that to say, my goals, sure, I have like financial goals, but I would say like the more deeply held relevant goals for me are that I can work from home and be, a mom to my kids and be very engaged and present in their lives. And that I have, the time freedom to do that. I have the time freedom to, engage on our little homestead here, that I can work with a small number of clients is very important to me because anyone in this industry knows that when you are working with a lot of people back to back to back, the quality of your service just goes down. You know, you just can't give to those people what you want to give. And I'm bringing such a variety of like, you know, health and wellness and healing kind of services and modalities that like I tell my clients, like, I want you to feel like you're the only person in the world, like when you're working with me. So that's really important to me that I'm able to work with a small number of people and give them like everything, right? And so that's what I do. That's really important to me. Um, yeah, and then just to be able to train the way that I want to train, right? To have the freedom to do that. So, in addition to the financial goals, those are like my bigger life goals.
I mean, the financial goals are all great and everything, and everyone wants to have a successful business. But I'm a big believer in this is a personal mantra that I have, and it's that the fish will never get bigger than the tank. And after you
Yeah.
work more than 50, 60 hours a week, you're going to get diminishing returns. And
Mhm.
so you really need to establish what's the quality of life that you want to have. And that's going to be more about having balance. What are your hobbies? Spending time with your family, having some sort of personal project. Obviously, your profession has its place and you want to be good at that, but it's all those things considered. It's living holistically. And I believe that's what leads to more sustainable happiness. That's just a question I like to have really unique guests. And so I just think that it's all about performance. And so it's about the people who want to perform are wired a little different. They're on this ongoing pursuit of knowledge. They look at their life like it is like they're writing a story. They tend to often be writers themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
It's really intriguing to me to just see, well, what is the motivating factor here? What drives you? What does success even look like? And more often than not, I find this fairly broad, holistic answer, which just provides confirmation because I believe that there's been this perception in modern America, like we all got to be a millionaire, etc. And I think that we're missing the point. And so you very much, just through talking to you, it appears as if you really have a grasp on what matters to you and just
Mhm.
giving each thing a lot of time and being very intentional about how you live your life. And that's just very inspiring. So,
Well,
love
thank
that.
you.
And as we wrap up now, my last question for you is, do you have a personal mantra or mission statement that you live by?
Yeah, so I have a couple. Okay, so I would say one of the mantras that I have is actually a very traditional Reiki meditation. So we haven't really talked about it. We didn't get to it today, but excuse me, like one of the practices that I bring is a Reiki energy healing practice. So this is something that I can do from a distance. You actually don't have to have technology for this, and you don't have to be in person, which is a lot of people are familiar with Reiki as an in-person practice. But little known fact, you can do it from a distance. So it enables me to do Reiki with people all over the world, which is really cool. Um, but sorry, all that to say, a very traditional Reiki meditation is just for today, I will not be angry. Just for today, I will not be worried. Just for today, I'll do my work honestly. Just for today, I will be grateful for my many blessings. And just for today, I will be kind to every living thing. And so that is a mantra slash meditation that I will do every single morning. So that's an important part of my life. Um, Another mantra that comes to mind is actually one that I brought to my first half Ironman attempt, which was actually my first triathlon ever. um, and I read this in the can I say it wrong? The Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. Well, they think it's by Lao Tzu. But he wrote something in there. When you have set out when you have accomplished what you set out to achieve, I might be butchering that a little bit, but I'm pretty sure it's when you accomplish what you set out to achieve. And something about that statement really struck me, that it doesn't say if you accomplish what you set out to achieve. The full sentence is, when you accomplish what you set out to achieve, simply walk away. And I loved like the humility around that. Like you don't need bells and whistles, like you just did it and it's great. And you can walk away and like move on to the next thing. But that word when as opposed to if. And when I set out to do my half Ironman, my first one, I said that to myself over and over and over the entire day. When I achieved what I set out to accomplish, I'm still butchering it. But, but the point was for me, it was kind of like that Yoda thing, like there is no try, there's only do, right? There was no if.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, there was no if, there's just when, right? And just to bring that attitude. And I swear, like every time I repeated it to myself, it was like I had a new energy and a new motivation, a new momentum, right? Just to keep on doing the thing. So that is an important mantra. And I would say, I have not maybe like formally come up with a mission statement for my business. I should definitely do that soon. But the thing that I keep coming back to is that I want to help women who have been told by their doctors that everything's normal and they know that everything is not normal. I want them to know that they don't have to struggle. I want to help them not struggle. I want them to know that their health can be simple. So my mission statement is something that encompasses all of that.
Love it. Love it. Um, yeah, that's good. I think it's important to always have some sort of word or quote that you live by,
Mm.
and especially reference that in moments of adversity. Yeah, well, covered everything. Um, just gonna give you the floor now. Where can the audience find you if you want to share a little bit more about your book or things that you have going on? The floor is yours.
Sure. So you can go to my website, goddesshealth.org. And at that website, you can do two things. You can get a copy of my book, Powerful Not Tired. And you can also get that little checklist of that resource of 5 things that you can do to improve your gut health that have nothing to do with nutrition. You can also go to Amazon and get both of my books, Powerful Not Tired and Couch to 50 Miles.
Awesome. And are you on any social media?
I am. I'm on Instagram, Lauren B. Callahan.
Perfect. Well, that's everything, Lauren. It has been a pleasure speaking with you. So many gems throughout this episode. Um, Definitely a great interview. Thank you so much for coming on here, and definitely looking forward to more of what you're doing and connecting with you in the future with questions that I have in my personal performance and to just learn. So thank you so much once again for coming on here.
Thank you for having me.